Welcome to Phambili, the building of a Wharram Tiki 38 catamaran. In the last video we turned the lower half of the port hull the right side up and started to work on some of the innards.
And the work on the hull is progressing nicely. Each of these little sections of the hull have been filleted and they have their barrier coat. So that's the front one. Oopsie. Going on to the next one. This looks so good once it's got that barrier coat on. And it's quite nice to see how each little section, when it's finished, it's all nice and shiny. And this is the one Grant worked on yesterday. It was yesterday that we did all of this. So yeah, all the fillets are in and it really looks good.
So having just recently turned the hull, the priority is to work on the fillets. Some were made upside down when the lower half hull plates were first put on. And so there's quite a fair amount of squeeze out that needs to be shaped, and I'd rather shape those into a fillet if I could than scrape them away to waste. We also need to work on the floors. Yeah, we need a space to stand on. It's pretty tricky propping yourself up in all these awkward situations. And then sanding in preparation for the barrier coat. The next step is to start putting in as much furniture as possible. This adds to the overall strength of the shape and will be important to keep the lower half straight and level when this goes in to prevent any twist. The keelson to hull and bulkhead to hull fillets need to be prepped and beefed up. This is really awkward work and the prep seemed to take ages. Never mind, there's still another hull to look forward to. So we've still got to finish off the fillet down the bottom here, between the hull side and the keelson, and all the other fillets around it about too. But what we've been thinking about is putting the butt blocks in on the hull joint here. The other side is a payson joint, which has worked out really well, but we need to put another 9mm block across here, so it's that thickness. We've got a slight curvature in the hull that we're going to need to take up as well, so we need to be pushing those blocks out. I'm wanting to go for around about a 250mm wide butt block. So we're going to start cutting those out now. So I'm going to measure between the bottom and here, knock off about 10 mils just to give us sufficient glue space. So Kaz, if you'll please write down 250 mils.
Why are you going
the length of the first one?
Why are you going 250 this way? Why so wide on that joint?
Because I've got old plug holes from the when I temporarily fasten them together to align these hull plates. We've got holes here, so if I go 250 then I can cover those. And the wider I make that joint, the stronger it's going to be. Because we've got a greater glue area on either side.
Yeah, well, it just looked like it was huge, but yeah, your logic makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Cool. Okay, so the first one is, so are we on the starboard side?
We are in the saloon, the freezer side, and we'll call it 250. Will be the first one. The second one we'll call that 270, and the third one we'll call that 195, and it'll obviously be the same on the port side.
We were lucky enough to find a piece of wood that was the right width for our 250 wide for the doublers, and with very little off-cut waste. We found that this router edge, this shape is just really great for the fiberglassing. And what bit do you use there?
This is a 1/4 inch round over. It's probably the tightest bend you can make with the 200 gram e-glass that we're using. But yeah, it does work, particularly if you've cut it on the cross so that the fibers go over at an angle. You see where I went into the little hole around the router and it dipped in there. Little mistakes that thank goodness can be filled up with a bit of epoxy. So those butt blocks got cut up and prepared and glassed and ready to fit in. We started to get quite creative with the way we put pressure on the blocks to create a bit of squeeze out.
Today's been a bit of a big mission with the fillets going into the bottom of the bilges and the fiberglass. The mission being not so much the difficulty of the job, but rather the access. Grant's been working below his feet and yeah, just finding it so uncomfortable, can't find a decent way to sit to be able to get on with it. So he's done a sterling job. Just putting in the fillets on the sides now and we should be good to go.
Where there's a will, we find a way. So using the car jack just to press down on a board that goes with thwart chips and exerting pressure on those butt blocks on the next layer up. Just again to squeeze out a bit of glue, and seemed to work a treat. By putting small G-clamps onto the keelson and strapping over the top of a bit of board, we were able to create a Spanish windlass.
And the start of cutting the bulkheads for the top of our first hull are happening. Looking at bulkhead 8, which is the one right at the very aft end of the hull. Grant's had to make a few little adjustments deeper in the hull towards the bilge, just because the tapering from the front here at this end didn't quite fit, and obviously those are as a result of all our twists and turns and just the different quirks that happen during the building of those putting on those boards on the stringers. So bulkhead number 8, our first of the upper bulkheads on the lofting floor. This stage now, we've given the bilge area a barrier coat. Again, just that richness of the colours that just come up is just amazing. Compare those two. Okay, the top's been sanded, but it's just absolutely vibrant. We've done the fillets underneath the stringers, and now the end of this floor area is being glued in. And so we put the glue on, run a credit card along the edges just to tidy it up, make it all neat. Get that extra bit of protection in the wood, because that's not going to be accessible to us once that lid's on. So coming along nicely. So the board is now in. We did the front fillet with Grant standing on it, squishing it down, and then we clamped it. And on this side we have put all our dive weights that we've got lying around just to hold the board flat. So that's working quite nicely, and it's giving us a little bit of room around the edge. So we've used a tongue depressor for this fillet size, and now just giving it a clean up with the credit card, clean all those edges to reduce the amount of sanding that is required at the end of it all. Looking good.
I'm really glad we managed to find these piping bags from our local bulk catering supplies. They make putting down thick and epoxy beads on some tricky edges a whole lot easier than it would be to batter it on using a tongue depressor. Finally having these floors in was to prove to be a massive improvement in how pleasant it was working in the boat. We'd also discovered that without clambering in and out, we were inclined to shuffle her about a bit in the cradles, and we'd have to make sure that before anything was glued in, that all of the plumb lines on each bulkhead were still sitting vertically, and that we hadn't started to twist the lower hull, which is quite flexible, in torsion at this stage. Hi everybody, and welcome to a rather steamy morning here in our boat shed in New Zealand. I thought I'd just show you where we're at. We're about to break for tea, and we're going to work on putting in a little transverse bulkhead across the aft end of the galley. So I'm going to use this plumb bob, and we're going to attach this board across the top so that it runs perfectly along this line, including a 12mm spacer that we're going to use. A board is going to go in there, and we're going to trace this template on that board. It needs to be in exactly the same plane that the bulkhead is going to be in. So here is the board that we're going to clamp on. We're going to try and keep this as upright as possibly can. It needs to be in line with that bottom edge. Everything should line up quite nicely. You'll see I've got a bit of leftover builder's card on the front of that, and it's onto that we're going to actually plot the profile of this template for the bulkhead that we're going to pop in there. So stay tuned for this amazingly simple method of plotting this bulkhead and find out what these hieroglyphics are all about. This amazingly simple method is probably as old as the hills, and definitely worth subscribing for. So we'll see you next time. Please feel free to post any constructive comments or suggestions. We'd love to engage with you further on these wonderful craft.